Thank you so much. Forrest, I have seen and known you since 1989. I know that there are people in this room, and if we could have the lights come down, that have been here maybe as many years as I have. I've been here 31, I think, 30, maybe 30 out of 31. And you know, today what I realized is that a lot of people were coming up to me and saying, this is my first Eureka Springs conference. And the feeling that we are passing a baton is the best in the world because I've always loved this place. It started out with the sense that when we came here in 1989, there were so many exciting UFO, animal mutilation, human abduction. It was right at the beginning of crop formations that had just surfaced in England. And when we were here at that first conference, I remember we didn't sleep, we hardly ate. It was just constant discussions, live, in rooms, going with people who wanted to show us something. And that was the year that an Air Force officer brought Ed Walters from the famous Gulf Breeze story here. And I think it was on the first night or so that this Air Force officer came up into my ear, literally, and said, do you want to meet Ed Walters? And he's here, because at that point, nobody had been able to talk with him. It was through MUFON and Bruce Maccabee down in Gulf Breeze that we knew there was this astonishing story of a family that has a UFO that appears to come out in their sky, and a beam came down and all of this. And it was a formative moment, looking back from here to 1989, that Air Force guy and Ed Walters and I, we sat up all night. The sun came up. And Ed Walters told us in detail about what had happened between him and entities on a craft. And I don't think anybody ever heard it again. And for those in the room who are thinking, well, wasn't Ed Walters, wasn't it all dismissed as a hoax? The truth is that the Air Force man and Ed Walters and I here at Eureka Springs in that exciting first conference, we went to the well, as it's called, and I never doubted that Ed Walters was telling us anything but what happened. And that later on, the attacks, probably coming from counter intel, even through MUFON, it was like one of those moments where you know that when you spend hours listening to somebody describe scenes and actions that no one has ever heard, which Ed Walters was telling us, that you have had an opportunity to get a reality check in a way that is up close and personal, and that is often what is missing in this field. It is why the government has gotten away since World War II with being able to put out, no, it was nothing but a pie pan thrown up by a teenager. No, it's nothing but a weather balloon that came down in Roswell. They get away with it because, as everybody here, I'm pretty sure, the ones who have been coming, you know, this is a very difficult field and there's lots of physical evidence, and as soon as there's physical evidence, this is the signal for counter intel in our government to make sure that no one gets anything except some kind of a faked, hoaxed explanation, to keep the public and the media from this subject that, when you go back 70 years ago, it was Truman and Eisenhower and Prime Minister Churchill. We know that from some documents now. They had made an agreement that Churchill said to Eisenhower after a disc had done rings like this around an RAF fighter that was coming back, apparently from the German-France border. And Churchill said, we're dealing with something that we must keep from the world public for 50 years, or stock markets will crash, religions will founder, and we will lose civilization. And in World War II years, with Adolf Hitler having said that he was going to populate this planet with all tall Aryan blondes with blue eyes, and that he set about to annihilate another group of people that were considered to be enemies of these blondes, the underbelly of World War II for people who were listening to Adolf Hitler always had a tincture of something from outer space, extraterrestrial, weapons, a huge weapon that could annihilate the world. And it was in that mix that our counterintelligence in the UK and the United States, Australia and New Zealand and Canada, the allies of World War II, were honing their skills about how to keep the public and the media away from what they knew was possibly an existential threat. And if not an existential threat, it was going to be so revolutionary that the leaders at the time could lose control of the planet. They really thought that. In this 30th trip for me, I have come to think of this conference as the place where the unexpected happens and where whistleblowers can emerge out of the crowd with truly important information. And in the past 3 decades, one of the most important whistleblowers shook my hand right here a year ago in this room. It was after I spoke. It was like what I hope today. I brought a couple of my volumes of Glimpses, Volume 1 and 2. I only have the 2. And I had said the same thing. I said, I'll meet you all down here after, because it will be dinner break and we could spend some time talking. And I had 2 of the volumes, and I'd like to do the same thing today. So right down around here. And I had a crowd around me, and a man stepped forward and he took my hand and he leaned forward and he said, I'm Craig from the emails. Silver crew cut, very military looking, crystal blue eyes. It was exactly 2 weeks before last year's Eureka Springs that I had received an email at my email address, earthfiles@earthfiles.com, on March 22nd, 2017. The subject was Antarctica is really amazing. I have friends there now. And it began, good morning. Have been trying to figure out how to bring some information to light, but really prefer face-to-face meeting. I'm in search of a writer who can put this information that my team and I possess onto paper. Antarctica contains wonders beyond what most can comprehend. It has ties to space and technology beyond belief. We hope to get this on paper really soon. It's been hidden for too long. To be as frank as possible, I don't think any government has any right to continue destroying the truths of our humans' ancient past. Some of the things that we have been told for centuries are in some ways true, but hide specifics. Others are deliberately altered to enable covert plans that I think that the American people have a right to know. Last year was very amazing. Many wonders took place the world has no clue about. Many of Linda's theories are facts, plain and simple, close quote. So now, right here in this room, a year ago, the man who wrote that email is shaking my hand and leaning forward and using the name, the actual name. I'm not using the actual name, I'm just calling him Craig. And he said, "Can we talk?" That is one of the most exciting things that happens at Eureka Springs, are people who come and say, "Can we talk?" We left this room and we went downtown to a place where we could talk. And it was about a 5 or 6 hours conversation about what was behind his email. And he was a retired Marine. But what I've begun to learn, because in the last 2 years, I've had 4 substantial incidents like this, where heavy-duty men in military, they all have been able to show me their DD-214s, one way or the other, by FedEx. And they have sent certificates that prove their names are consistent. The names are on the DD-214s that have their birth dates. The DD-214 is valuable because in the United States, any person who has legitimately served for any branch of the military has to have a DD-214, which a journalist should always ask for. Now, it's not going to say, I worked for the National Security Agency in Antarctica on uncovering artifacts 33 million years ago so that we could sanitize Antarctica before it's shown to the world. Doesn't say anything like that. But it will show you when a person has entered, when they were discharged. You assume, but you look, is it an honorable discharge? Does it have any qualifications? And you will have dates of service, and it will show you usually some part of the world. And this is what you need to go forward with anybody who says, I served X, and I did Y, and I learned Z about extraterrestrials and technology. So he did that. He provided that information. But he also explained that he, like his 2 other colleagues that he wanted me to meet, that they would retire from their military service and be immediately contracted into special operations. And the idea is that the CIA, DIA, NSA, NRO, and on so forth, they want the best of the best. They want to be able to control those groups, and they want to do it in operations in which every single person will have signed agreements, basically signing their lives away in exchange for money and doing whatever the highly classified, sensitive operation is that they don't want to risk with, let's say, a general army platoon. So that's what this man, when he comes to talk to me, he's working special forces with a Marine background. And he told me that he would like to document this. And we had an agreement that I was going to organize videotaping with him and his 2 colleagues, which would travel, and that I would keep this quiet and secret until I had, like with Prometheus in LA, that I do Ancient Aliens with every year, that we would work something out to get this story about Antarctica. And the other part, interestingly enough, I'm not going into this in depth today, I'm going to go what he and a couple of others guided to me to what they think is the most important. But I'm just going to summarize in a sentence which galvanized my mind in that meeting in Eureka Springs a year ago. He said, Linda, I know for a fact, based on my own firsthand with the Special Forces, we have a huge archaeological site in Antarctica It's 1.5 miles under the ice. We get to it in a submarine. And for 15 years, we've been on tasks to remove artifacts. They want to sanitize before they open it up to the world. That's what makes him angry. What right does any human element have to deny all the rest of us knowing what is under 1.5 miles of ice that's been there somewhere between 13 and 33 million years ago? And then he said, and I know for a fact, because this has been part of our mission, we know that on the backside of the moon and the interior of the moon, that we know that there are artifacts that have hieroglyphics and symbols that match Antarctica. And we know from other operations that in Cydonia and northern hemisphere of Mars are hieroglyphs and symbols there that match the moon and Antarctica. And that this is how big the story has been for this particular special forces. And after we talked here, the next week, he texted me, quote, "Linda, thank you for all you do. You give hope to men like me. You see, men like me get very few opportunities to see what we are protecting back home. Most of what we see, what we are protecting or trying to back home, we do from the shadows, never to be spoken about, to benefit those who will never be burdened by the knowledge of horrors that follow," close quote. And then, 7.5 months ago, on Saturday, August 26, 2017, I was sitting in a chair and I was writing a script. And the phone rang and something told me, answer this. And it was this Craig. And why this was so exceptional is between when I was here in Eureka Springs a year ago and this date in August, he had tried to communicate with me through text, through Signal, which is supposed to be an encrypted phone, and and his cell phone twice. After immediately talking with me, it would be melted. They call it the blow up of the cell. At one point he said, "Linda, the other two men and I, we just don't know how we're going to do this, because what we're learning is your every breath is being tracked by the men in black. Your every breath." And I took that to a retired Navy captain who helps me on many, many things. He's very trustworthy. I said, "What do you suppose in 2017 to 2018, what do you suppose that means? My every breath, they're tracking." And he said, "Well, you know, I understand that we are now monitoring human brain signals from satellites. So, Linda, they probably have a program. You have a unique brain pattern, everybody does." And he said they probably tune into you, and they know when you're asleep, when you're awake, where you are. They don't care about cell phones. They don't care about equipment. They can track your brainwaves. What I just said to you is extremely important for the rest of my presentation. In that August 26th, 2017 Saturday phone call to me from Craig, knowing what has happened, the blow up on not just his cell phones, but the other two that we've been trying to work with. He did this just long enough to tell me this, because I always keep notebooks by phones on the different rooms. So I wrote down, I'm used to doing that. I write very fast. And so this is exactly what he said before he hung up. Quote, at a top robotics company in Japan this week, meaning August 2017, 4 robots being developed for military applications killed 29 humans in the lab with something that shot metal bullets. The scariest part is that lab workers deactivated 2 of the robots. They're pulling the robot apart. And then they took apart the 3rd, and while they were doing that, the 4th robot began restoring itself and somehow connected to an orbiting satellite that they had been using in the training of the militarized robots to communicate with a satellite. The robot connects to an orbiting satellite to download information about how to rebuild itself even more strongly than before. Linda, he said, this is serious, and he said the word, I'll spell it, S-H-I-T. But you're never going to hear about this on the news. The robotics company has too much to lose, and governments, including ours, want AI robotic soldiers, close quote. I immediately thought of what happened last July at the 2017 National Governors Association meeting in Providence, Rhode Island. 30 governors gathered at the final session to hear Elon Musk, CEO and founder of Tesla and SpaceX, talk about the future. Musk wanted a warning that he has been making for some time, that the development of robots, androids, and cyborgs with human-like artificial intelligence is, quote, a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization, close quote. And here now is an excerpt from what Elon Musk told the governors.
Are robots going to take our jobs, everybody's jobs in the future? Or how much do you see artificial intelligence coming into the workplace?
Well, first of all, I think on the artificial intelligence front, you know, I have exposure to the very most cutting-edge AI, and I think people should be really concerned about it. I keep sounding the alarm bell, but you know, until people see like robots going down the street killing people, like they don't know how to react, you know, because it seems so ethereal. I think we should be really concerned about AI. AI is a rare case where I think we need to be proactive in regulation instead of reactive. Because I think by the time we are reactive in AI regulation, it's too late. AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization. In a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals within society, of course, but they were not harmful to society as a whole. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization, and I don't think people fully appreciate that.
By August 21st, the Washington Post headlined, Elon Musk calls for ban on killer robots before weapons of terror are unleashed. Quote, Tesla chief executive Elon Musk says that artificial intelligence is more of a risk to the world than is North Korea, offering humanity a stark warning about the perilous rise of autonomous machines. Now, the tech billionaire has joined more than 100 robotics and artificial intelligence experts calling on the United Nations to ban one of the deadliest forms of such machines, autonomous weapons, close quote. In an open letter to the United Nations on certain conventional weapons, Elon Musk and 116 other AI intelligence experts, including Alphabet's Google, wrote, "Lethal autonomous weapons threaten to become the third revolution in warfare. Once developed, they will permit armed conflict to be fought at a scale greater than ever, and at timescales faster than humans can comprehend. These can be weapons of terror, weapons that terrorists use against innocent populations, and weapons hacked to behave in undesirable ways. We do not have long to act." He gives it 4 years to get on top of this, or he thinks it's lost. Once this Pandora's box is opened, it will be hard to close. We therefore implore the high contracting parties to find a way to protect us all from these dangers. 30 nation representatives signed the open letter, including China, Israel, Russia, Britain, South Korea, and France. And then it was made public in an international AI conference in Melbourne, Australia. The next day, on August 22nd, 2017, the UK Telegraph headlined, "Hackers turn family robots into weapons and spying tools." Recently, security researchers at the large cybersecurity global corporation IO-Active in Seattle, Washington, demonstrated how company technicians hacked into an IO-Active robot and turned it into a domestic spy that would also do violence on command, and demonstrated that a home helper robot could do damage with a screwdriver attached in the robot's hand, shown in the lower right of this video frame. Warning has also come from Lucas Appa, the principal security consultant at IOA-Active in Seattle. He told the Telegraph, quote, "Even non-military robots could be weaponized to cause harm. After all, they are not toys. They are increasingly capable computers with arms, legs, or wheels, which will only get bigger, stronger, faster with each new generation," close quote. With advanced logic sensors and abilities to do physical labor outside and inside, what guarantee is there that even the evolving non-military robots won't act independently of their human owners and handlers? Military robotic autonomy is already a big worry. 29 people dead in a Japanese lab by 4 robots being militarized for warfare. That's what military robotic autonomy is already a big worry means. On July 18, 2017, U.S. Air Force General Paul J. Selva, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, testified during a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., seeking reappointment. General Selva was asked what he thought of the DoD directive that requires a human operator to be kept in the decision-making process when robotic weapons are used to take human life. General Selva answered, quote, "I don't think it's reasonable for us to put robots in charge of whether or not we take a human life," close quote. Weaponized robotics is advancing rapidly without nations organizing and coordinating the vital regulations that would be necessary to guard against what happened in Japan in August 2017, when those 4 weaponized robots acted on their own volition. This is really important. We're talking about, when you talk and hear autonomous, there's no human configuration, compassion, there's nothing in there except the algorithms. It's the algorithms in these weaponized robots. And the algorithms are designed to make the militarized, weaponized robots think and act independently, and only those autonomous robots will make the decision of shoot to kill or throw the bomb. Already, in some of Earth's war zones, such as the demilitarized zone between South and North Korea, guard robots provide security. South Korea military is using the SGR-A1 made by Samsung. It is working as an armed sentry along the 160-mile-long border between North and South Korea. Those SGR-A1 guard robots are the first commercial AI robot with autonomous capabilities in surveillance, tracking, firing guns, and voice recognition. The number of SGR-A1s in operation is unknown because the project is so highly classified. There could be hundreds and hundreds of autonomous, weaponized, ready to kill on that border. Think about that. Next, it is expected that the wholly autonomous SGR-A1 robots will be installed not only on national borders, but also in airports, power plants, oil storage bases, and military bases. And as I've been reading about all of this, and I've thought how many airports I go in and out of, and the idea that one of these autonomous militarized robots could be what is greeting us at security, with no guarantee whatsoever that what happened in that Japan lab wouldn't happen at an airport in security. Please let that sink in. As Elon Musk and others point out, autonomous guard robots and weapons can cross a moral threshold where the intelligent machines could have open season on humans, perceived by a robot sentry programmed with certain autonomous algorithms to fire at a perceived threat. Human Rights Watch adds, quote, "The humanitarian and security risks should outweigh any possible military benefit. Defenders of autonomous weaponized robots make false presumptions that technical advances can address these many dangers posed by these future militarized AI weapons. Wishing doesn't make it so." At the same mid-July time that Elon Musk was warning the governors in Rhode Island, the UK Daily Mail headlined, "US military reveals $65 million funding for matrix projects to put human brains directly into a computer." Overseeing this new research is the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, also known as DARPA, which says its goal is, quote, "to develop an implantable system able to provide precision communication between the brain and the digital world," close quote. Think of the embedded six-fingered panels that you have seen in which there is the concept that brains of extraterrestrials can control the technology of a craft with their minds. We're being led into that world now. As afraid as Elon Musk says he is about the existential risk that weaponized artificial intelligence could be to humankind, he is enthusiastic about developing artificial intelligence for what Elon Musk calls human enhancement, and he is founder of a brand new company called Neuralink. The research there is to link the human brain with a machine interface by creating micron-sized devices that can do human genetic engineering at the nanotech level to repair damaged brains and body parts and to provide technological enhancement such as enhanced memory, enhanced communication, enhanced senses, multi-dimensional thinking, and extending the human body's lifetime. Everything that we would love. It's how do we live and go forward on a planet where every great idea can be militarized. Neuralink was registered in California as a medical research company last July 2017, and Musk plans on funding the company mostly by himself. His goal is to produce a neural lace technology in which tiny brain electrodes can be implanted right into the brain to upload and download thoughts. He thinks in only 4 years from now, his neural laces will be able to help people with severe brain injuries, stroke, and even cancer. When you Google artificial intelligence, human enhancement, this is what Wikipedia shows. Anti-aging movement, cloning, directed evolution, genetic engineering, gene therapy, human-animal hybrid, liberal eugenics, life extension, and post-human. I thought that post-human on this list of human enhancements was ironic because post-human is roughly synonymous with saying we are headed toward being cyborgs. A cyborg is a being with both organic and biomechanical body parts that will give you strength, endurance, clear thinking all of the time, persisting at high energy with little or no sleep because you wouldn't be dependent solely upon the condition of your body's organic DNA or cells and blood flow through the heart and lungs. Cyborg machine-like humans would not decline with age or wear out, and they would not be susceptible to temperature and atmosphere changes. So a new version of cyborg humans would actually be much better for space travel than frail Homo sapiens sapien. And the ultimate irony would be if humanity on Earth sets about to create space-traveling cyborgs that are supposed to work for humans, but instead become a self-perpetuating force that replaces humans. That is Elon Musk's implication when he warns that AI weaponization of robots poses an existential threat to all life on Earth, and he does think we only have 4 years to get on top of this. Swedish philosopher Nick Bostrom, PhD, is professor in the Faculty of Philosophy at Oxford University. He is founding director of the Future of Humanity Institute and is one of the top 100 global thinkers in Foreign Policy magazine that recognizes the world's preeminent thought leaders. He also was awarded the Professional Distinction Award from Oxford University in England. Dr. Bostrom was first to warn about the existential risk to humanity in this 21st century. His work provoked not only Elon Musk, but Microsoft founder Bill Gates and astrophysicist Stephen Hawking, God rest his soul in whatever dimension he's in now. Hopefully he's going to come back to help us. And here is an excerpt from a TED Talk that Dr. Bostrom gave only 3 years ago.
I work with a bunch of mathematicians, philosophers, and computer scientists, and we sit around and think about the future of machine intelligence, among other things. Some people think that some of these things are sort of science fiction-y, far out there, crazy. But I like to say, okay, let's look at the modern human condition. This is the normal way for things to be. But if we think about it, we're actually recently arrived guests on this planet. The human species, well, like, think about if the world was created, Earth was created 1 year ago. The human species then would be 10 minutes old. The industrial era started 2 seconds ago. Another way to look at this is to think of world GDP over the last 10,000 years. I've actually taken the trouble to plot this for you in a graph. It looks like this. It's a curious shape for a normal condition. I sure wouldn't want to sit on it. Colleagues think we are on the verge of something that could cause a profound change in that substrate. And that is machine superintelligence. Like, artificial intelligence used to be about putting commands in a box. You would have human programmers that would painstakingly handcraft knowledge items. You build up these expert systems, and they were kind of useful for some purposes, but they were very brittle. You couldn't scale them. Basically, you got out only what you put in. But since then, a paradigm shift has taken place in the field of artificial intelligence. Today, the action is really around machine learning. So rather than handcrafting knowledge representations and features, we create algorithms that learn, often from raw perceptual data. Basically the same thing that the human infant does. The result is AI that is not limited to one domain. The same system can learn to translate between any pairs of languages, or learn to play any computer game at the Atari console. Now, of course, AI is still nowhere near having the same powerful cross-domain ability to learn and plan as a human being has. The cortex still has some algorithmic tricks that we don't yet know how to match in machines. But so the question is, how far are we from being able to match those tricks? A couple of years ago, we did a survey of some of the world's leading AI experts to see what they think. And one of the questions we asked was, by which year do you think there is a 50% probability that we will have achieved human-level machine intelligence? We defined human level here as the ability to perform almost any job at least as well as an adult human, so real human level, not just within some limited domain. And the median answer was 2040 or 2050, depending on precisely which group of experts we asked. Now, it could happen much, much later or sooner. Like, the truth is nobody really knows. Right? What we do know is that the ultimate limits to information processing in machine substrate lie far outside the limits in biological tissue. This comes down to physics. A biological neuron fires maybe at 200 hertz, 200 times a second. But even a present-day transistor operates at a gigahertz. Neurons propagate slowly in axons, 100 meters per second tops. But in computers, signals can travel at the speed of light. There are also size limitations, like a human brain has to fit inside a cranium, but a computer can be the size of a warehouse or larger. So the potential for superintelligence kind of lies dormant in matter, much like the power of the atom lies dormant throughout human history, patiently waiting there until 1945. In this century, scientists may learn to awaken the power of artificial intelligence.
So one of the smartest technology people on this planet, Nick Bostrom, compares the existential threat he thinks AI can have on humanity to the atomic bomb first tested in White Sands, New Mexico in July of 1945, followed by the 2 atomic bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima 2 weeks later, and then all of the testing that we did into the 1960s. In this 21st century, he's making this metaphor where artificial intelligence is expected to keep evolving exponentially in competition with humans. In fact, only 4.5 months ago, on the 30th of November, the Washington Post headlines, robots could replace nearly 1/3 of the US workforce by 2030. That's 12 years from now. The new statistics are from the McKinsey Global Institute that studies business and economics. By 2030, McKinsey estimates that the global demand for human workers, such as secretaries, paralegals, and administrators, will drop by 20% and keep dropping. An even greater drop of 30% less work will apply to construction equipment installation and repair, card dealing at casinos, security guards, dishwashing, and food preparation. All will see great inroads by competitive robots made specifically to do those once human jobs, but more efficiently without any sick time. And Elon Musk likes to say that one of the statistics that they are working with right now in governments is that in another decade, 30% of all truck driving will be being done by autonomous robots. One of the possible future human enhancement technologies that sticks out in relationship to the human abduction syndrome connected to alien intelligences and their interactions with Homo sapien on Earth is called mind uploading. It's a cutting-edge speculation that scientists so far have never done. I don't believe it. I think they have, but that's what they say. And here is how mind uploading is defined by Wikipedia, quote, "The hypothetical process of transferring, uploading, or copying a conscious mind from a brain to a non-biological substrate, some artificial substance, by scanning and mapping a biological brain in detail and copying its state into a computer system or another computational device. And based on my investigations of human abductees, I have listened to hypnosis sessions and interviewed many people who talk exactly about having their mind taken out by an alien being and then put back with added information." This was a 1984 hypnosis session with a commercial artist who was driving with his wife when suddenly a cerulean blue-green beam of light surrounded their car and they were lifted up from a Colorado highway near Longmont, north of Denver. It was Thanksgiving week of 1980, and both remembered consciously looking down as their car rose and they could see the tops of trees. And then the car was lowered into a forest. Both felt compelled in their minds to get out of the car and walk toward a craft glowing in pale yellow light and resting on what looked like curved erector set legs. In an opening on the side of a disc-shaped craft was a tall, hairless humanoid wearing a long, dark blue robe with a raised collar. The couple both felt compelled to walk toward this tall, handsome humanoid. But when they got into the craft, they were disturbed, even felt tricked, that instead of the blue-caped humanoid who had invited them into the craft, they were confronted by this gray-skinned, large-headed being wearing a goldish leotard-fitting suit with a strange, large, double-layered collar, quite different than the tall, handsome humanoid in the sweeping blue cape. And the husband said, quote, "They've got big heads. They aren't like we are. Somebody's talking, but it's like they're picking my mind, like I don't have any control. My brain, it's like there's a tunnel that goes through my mind to theirs, almost like a shaft through my head, something with my brain to his. Our minds are connected. It's like a tube. Maybe it's light. Brownish gray light. It's like everything's pulled out of my head, like a waterfall, and everything is gone. There's a terrible sound, but I can't tell what it is, only it's piercing, high-pitched. It's coming from my head. It's like I can see all of my thoughts, like goo. Everything in my mind is stripped. They've got the whole thing. They've just pulled everything right out of me," close quote. The husband was completely silent for a few minutes under hypnosis, and nothing that hypnotherapist Richard Sigismund said or did could get the husband to speak. And then on his own, the husband began to whisper, His voice slowly got louder as he described what the alien beings put in his mind. Quote, "There's more to this universe than anybody knows. There's more to life, more to the world. There's more to everything than anybody knows. More dimensions, things coexisting. There are other dimensions, more than 3 dimensions. Everywhere it all works together. Everything coexists. There's different dimensions we cannot go into. These beings want to know about people," close quote. But is the alien long-time interest in manipulation of Homo sapien because they genetically manipulated already evolving primates into the different standing up models of humanoids on Earth and have continued to monitor us while waiting for what? The concept that we humans are someone else's experiment, that Earth is like one big laboratory to mix and match genes for all kinds of life form generations and experiments, relates to what Elon Musk is warning, that we are right on the brink now of our own experiment with making artificially intelligent robots and cyborgs that we will program, we will monitor, we will keep tweaking with advancements that serve human needs, not the robots. But will our robotic, cyborg, android, cloned creatures turn on us and kill us, as happened in that Japanese robotics company this past August 2017? When machines become stronger and smarter than the biophysical life forms that made them, what would ever keep those advanced, intelligent machines subservient to lesser, organic, mortal humanity? And that is what Elon Musk and Gates and Hawking and all of these people are now beginning to warn about. That same idea of a prime intelligence making different clones or hybrids or androids or cyborgs to meet many different needs and missions came up indirectly in an alleged briefing for the newly elected US President Ronald Reagan that was in a classified meeting at Camp David, March 6 to 8, 1981. Directing the meeting with insiders from the CIA, NSA, DIA was Reagan's appointee for CIA Director, William Colby. A transcript of the alleged Camp David discussion was reprinted at the Serpo website in 2007. I shared a copy with a Washington, D.C. whistleblower who has helped me through the years. He told me he knows for a fact there was such a briefing for Ronald Reagan at Camp David about UFOs and ETs, March 6 to 8, 1981. And he confirmed that the Colorado couple was dealing with what our government calls EBINs, extraterrestrial biological entities. Today, I can add the probability that types called EBA-1, depicted in the charcoal on the left, are advanced enough in genetics to manufacture, create, produce EBA type 2s, shown on the right. The androids are what do work on this planet Earth and throughout our solar system and through the Milky Way galaxy and beyond. That means abductees have usually been handled by the small, black-eyed little guys, not the prime EBIN intelligence that made the little guy androids. Before I get into that Reagan ET briefing, I would like to share just some notes that I made in the whistleblower discussion with the man who helps me in Washington, D.C., and this goes back to October 18th, 1983. EBA-2, trying to teach human scientists about their EBIN technology. They use a completely different set of physical laws than ours. It means that the androids have been sent here on a mission trying to teach some of the humans that deal with them. In our case, only the government and intel. Our physics would not apply in their civilization, but theirs can apply in ours. I've been told it's because the Ebens come from Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, a binary star system, and that even if our astrophysicists and astronomers do not understand this now, that when you are in a system where you have two suns of certain masses and you have certain numbers of planets, the mass distribution is like an egg beater, and it causes completely different physics. That's the way that sentence has been explained to me. The Ebens travel interdimensionally, many times faster than the speed of light. It's like where people have used that example of where you take the corner of a napkin and you fold it to its opposite corner. There are many dimensions, two of which we might relate to, but at least a dozen we would not relate to. All Ebens look alike. The society on their planet is supposed to be in the Zeta Reticuli binary solar system, about 39 light years from Earth, is worldwide and leaders are for life, but every Eben has a different personality. I asked him what that meant, and he said he did not understand either. It's just what he was told. The Ebens brought 5 different humanoid species, juvenile delinquents, question mark, he said that they consider, to the planet Earth a long time ago. Our whole planet is a sociological experiment. That's why they persist in the guardian role versus the renegade, blonde Swedes and others. Interesting that this particular point of view would cast the blondes as the renegades. The problem is, if the Ebens go away from Earth, what will happen? They have a computer base in our moon. This is 1983, October, compared to where I started today. They have a computer base in our moon and throughout our solar system. Is that sufficient monitoring to keep the blonde Swedes in check? He said the Swedes, quote, have all their menagerie of cloned biological entities too. Why I feel this was important to share that date, October 18th, 1983, talking about blondes that are in the category of renegades from the point of view of CIA, DIA, NSA. I had absolutely none of the following context from the only recently released in this century of the Ronald Reagan alleged briefing, and keep what I just read from 83 in mind as we go into the Ronald Reagan or excerpts of this briefing. This was numbered Release 27A, Reagan briefing. Any of you in here who have never been to the SERPA website, I recommend it. I genuinely think that what I'm sharing with you now are real, literal transcripts, words, and it would do, probably you'd be amazed at how much is there, but at least read for yourself, Release 27A, Reagan briefing. It was one of 35 reports from 2005 to 2007, and that said that were posted in order to, quote, facilitate the gradual release of confidential documents pertaining to a top-secret exchange program of 12 U.S. military personnel from Earth to Serpo, a planet of Zeta Reticuli, between the years 1965 to 1978, and that's the famous Steven Spielberg doing the White House screening of encounters with Reagan, and allegedly Reagan's leaning over to Steven Spielberg and saying, we are only two of, I think he said, we are only 2 of maybe 4 people in this room who know how true the ending of your film is. And for everybody who has seen Encounters, what happens? Our astronauts, scientists in the orange uniforms get in that big UFO and go off to their planet. Okay, now, the following excerpts are part of 6 Defense Intelligence Agency, NSA, CIA personnel working with CIA Director William Casey to do this briefing. And the subject is unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial visitation of Earth, close quote. Leading the discussion was William Casey, along with CIA advisors and a caretaker of the ET history. Casey was Reagan's campaign manager in 1980, and President Reagan asked Casey to become CIA director from 81 to 87. That means this briefing on March 6 to 8, 1981, was only 2 months after Ronald Reagan first took office on January 20th as President of the United States. Caretaker. The United States of America has been visited by extraterrestrial visitors since 1947. We have proof of that, close quote. Now, the truth is, there was a very important crash retrieval 6 years before Roswell, and that was in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. I have no doubt about this whatsoever. Allegedly, the date was in April of 1941. It is discussed in the leaked Majestic 12 documents, from which a, quote, neutronic propulsion device was retrieved and delivered later to Robert Oppenheimer when he began work in Los Alamos, New Mexico, to produce the first American atomic bomb. Oppenheimer got the neutronic propulsion device from the Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and they didn't want anybody to know anything. Remember that, how sensitive all that was. So a line is drawn in the sand, and the only thing we're allowed to ever know is because of the mistake, fluke, that the headline got leaked from the head of the Army Air Force airfield in Roswell. Disk crashes in Roswell. If that hadn't happened, we would never have known. The caretaker continues, quote, "We also have some proof that Earth has been visited for many thousands of years by various races of extraterrestrial visitors. Mr. President, I'll just refer to those visitors as ETs. In July 1947, a remarkable event occurred in New Mexico. During a storm, 2 ET spacecraft crashed. One crashed southwest of Corona, New Mexico, and one crashed near Dadle, New Mexico. The U.S. Army eventually found both sites and recovered all of the debris and one live alien. I'll refer to this live alien as EBA-1. President Reagan asked, well, what does that mean? Do we have codes or a special terminology for this? Caretaker, Mr. President, EBA means extraterrestrial biological entity. It was a code designated to this creature by the U.S. Army back in those days. This creature was not human, and we had to decide on a term for it. So scientists designated the creature as EBA-1. We also referred to it as Noah. There was different terminology used by various aspects of the U.S. military and intelligence community back then. Reagan, can we classify them, connect them with anything earthly? Caretaker, no, Mr. President. They don't have any similar characteristics of a human, with exception of their eyes, ears, and a mouth. Their internal body organs are different. Their skin is entirely different from human. We could not classify any part of the aliens with humans. They had blood and skin, although considerably different than human skin. Their eyes had 2 different eyelids, probably because their home planet was very bright. And as I said, they're supposed to be from Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, and that is supposed to be where 12 of our military intel people went in Project Serpo. Reagan asks, is time the same on their planet as on ours? Caretaker, no, Mr. President. Time is very different on the Eben planet, which, by the way, we do call Serpo. That means, in Latin, to creep or crawl. And maybe it's a planet of reptilian genetics. The Serpo day is approximately 40 hours. That is measured by the movement of their two suns. The solar system containing Serpo is a binary star system, not like our one sun. The caretaker. The distance from Earth to Serpo is about 40 light years. Again, Zeta Reticuli is 39.4. They're rounding up. They can travel that distance in about 9 of our months. I am no scientist, but as I mentioned earlier, they can travel that great distance by means of space tunnels. They seem to be able to bend the distance from one point in space to another. Just how they do this must be explained scientifically. Reagan, are they all friendly? Advisor number 1. Mr. President, that is a very difficult question to answer. There are many parameters that we follow to evaluate the threat. However, we have little intelligence on 4 of the 5. We have plenty of intel on the Ebens. They've given us everything we've asked for. They also have helped us to understand the other 4 species. I'm afraid to say, Mr. President, and please don't misunderstand my words, but we think one of the species is very hostile. Mr. President, we have intelligence, this is Casey, that would indicate this one species of aliens have abducted people from Earth. They have performed scientific and medical tests on these humans. To the best of our knowledge, no humans have been killed, but as advisor number 1 stated, the intelligence is from witnesses, and we haven't thoroughly evaluated this intelligence. We have captured one of these hostile aliens. This gets into some very, very sensitive areas, Mr. President. I strongly suggest we end this discussion and move on to any further questions you might have and then get back to this. I don't think we are prepared to provide you with accurate answers to your questions about the potentially hostile aliens at this time in March 1981. Reagan, okay, but expect this to be given to me as soon as possible. I want to know everything about these hostile creatures. So, we should start forming policies about how to deal with them. Advisor number 1, do we have operational war plans on this? Advisor, yes, Mr. President, we have war plans on all potential threats to our country. I'd love to see that book. Then CIA Director Casey asks the caretaker to give President Reagan the names of known alien groups. The caretaker, okay, Mr. President, the 5 species are Ebens, Archeloids, Quadloids, Heplaloids, and Tronoloids. These names were given to the alien species by the intelligence community, specifically MJ5. The Ebens are friendly. The Trontoloids are the dangerous ones. We call the hostile aliens simply that HAV, meaning hostile alien visitors. MJ12 placed that code on them back in the 1950s. Now, for those who are new and may not understand what the reference to MJ12 is, there is an organization that has been defined in a lot of leaked documents, some of which we think are very credible and some we can't prove, but that the group was originally organized in September of 1947 by Harry S. Truman, president, after the July 1947 Roswell and several other crashes, as a secret committee of scientists, military leaders, businessmen, and government officials under an executive order by U.S. President Harry S. Truman, and it was a classified executive order, to monitor and analyze the interactions of non-human intelligences with Earth and to organize back engineering of advanced ET technologies retrieved from down ET craft. Reagan, you mean to say these HAVs have been visiting us and kidnapping our people since the 1950s? Casey, Mr. President, we have some indication that they might have been doing this for some time. But we can be sure that the Ebens have never done this. They are extremely peaceful and would not harm a living soul, including animals. Absolutely not true. I showed you the Colorado couple when those illustrations are in my first book, An Alien Harvest. And I'll never forget, it was another conference, not here, another conference. And it was somewhere around when I released that book in 89, 90, 91, somewhere in there. And a man walked up to me at a conference, and he had an alien harvest, and he opened the book, and he showed me a photograph ID badge. He said, I want you to know that this illustration in your book is like a color photograph of one of the EBA ones. So, President Reagan, my God, just knowing we have names for these things is amazing. Which one did we capture? Mr. President, we have a tronoloid, but it is dead. We captured it in 1961 in Canada, and we had it in captivity until 1962 when it died. Hey, Grant, if you're in the room, I wanted to ask you if you knew about this. I've done all sorts of research in 1961, and I cannot find anything, which I guess if I had, it would be suspicious. I think that this is probably a real statement, and I'd love Grant to let us know if he knows of anything. Mr. President, these hostile aliens are pretty sneaky. They seem to appear and disappear, which is beyond our technical understanding. They also seem to float or defy gravity. We have actual photographs of them doing this. We have a classic abduction incident that was recorded by military intelligence personnel. It happened in 1979 near a military base. And the president asked where, and the advisor says in New Mexico. The caretaker, New Mexico is similar to the home planet of the Ebens. They are from a desert-like planet in the binary solar system, Zeta 1 and 2 Reticuli, where the suns are similar to our sun. Since we do not know which planet the tronoloids come from, and then advisor number 4 interrupts. I think we do. I think the Ebens gave us that information. We know the star group. It is close to our solar system in astronomical terms, maybe 10.5 light years away. The tronoloids are actually closer to us than the Ebens are. 39 light years to Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, 10.5 to Epsilon Eridani. That's exactly what it is, Epsilon Eridani. This star map shows all the star systems that lie within 12.5 light years from our sun, which is the yellow circle at the center. To the lower left, only 10.5 light years from us, is Epsilon Eridani, shown as an orange circle to represent its cooler temperature as an orange dwarf star compared to our yellow G spectrum sun. But both stars and their solar systems are very similar. Now, scientists, astronomers say that there are 2 planets, one like a Jupiter, gaseous, one a rocky planet, around Epsilon Eridani. And Epsilon Eridani is on the left, and our sun is on the right. And so here is the gaseous ringed planet. And then there is another rocky, and then here is a NASA illustration, and down in the lower left, for the first time, this is new, only in the last year or so. There we go. Okay, so here's Epsilon Eridani. Here is the big gaseous planet. Here's what they think is a rocky planet. And only recently do they think they have evidence that there is a third planet in one of 2 asteroid belts that go around here. And therefore, this 1981 information, subtract 1981 from 2018. If this is all true, our government, the president, knew about this, which we are only learning about today. It's just nice to keep in mind the disconnect in the timeline between where our government is at any time and where we are kept back. Here is another illustration of our galactic neighborhood out to about 20 years, light years from our solar system. Here's us. Here's us. Here's Epsilon Eridani. Here's Tau Ceti. Forrest Crawford did a great presentation about a being from Tau Ceti who was working with Drake at Cornell, that one, who worked with Carl Sagan. And at some point, Forrest should do another presentation on the Tau Cetian that our government had, experimented with, and what happened. And here's Tau Ceti, very close in this neighborhood. But they look like ruddy Irishmen, humanoids that look like Irish, the Tau Cetians. And here is another overlay, just so that you can see. Here's Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. This is actually based on the work of the Betty and Barney Hill case when she drew under hypnosis. Here's our sun, and Epsilon Eridani and Tau Ceti would be over here. Oh, here's Tau Ceti, that's right. So it'd be this direction in this particular map. But she drew under hypnosis that there were heavy-duty trade routes going between Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 and some of these other stars, and in her map under hypnosis, there were dotted lines going out, and she understood that it was exploratory research to Earth. The Ebens cloned other races of aliens. The archeloid is a cloned biological entity known as a CBE created by the Ebens, and the quadloids were also cloned from 2 other species of praying mantis insect and lizards. No details were given to Reagan about the 4th alien species on the list called heplaloids, at least not in this transcript they weren't, but allegedly they are from a planet, the heplaloids, in a very distant solar system near the Cygnus army of the Milky Way galaxy. Rumors are that they are related to tall whites or tall and short blondes. These humanoids have been one of the greater puzzles in the human abduction syndrome because some experiencers have positive experiences with them and others sense there is great deception. The 3rd type on the list are quadloids that were cloned by the Ebens from 2 other species, the praying mantis and lizards. Some abductees who encounter the 8-foot-tall praying mantis feel overwhelmed by a sense of age in the praying mantis, as old as our 4.6 billion-year-old solar system, they say. And they feel an emotion of great sadness from the mantis being. Abductees have said to me, quote, "It's like the creature was assigned to watch over our solar system and knows something very sad about us humans." The 2nd type on the list are archeloids that were also genetically engineered by the Ebens through rapid cycle cloning. Our government calls them cloned biological entities, or CBEs. This illustration of an archeloid shows a big hooked nose, yellow vertical pupils like a snake or cat in large dark eyes, a head with a raised knob on top covered by a layered headdress, large ears with the technology dropping down like an earring, holding a rod with a spiral around it that is identified as a language translator. The archeloid stood back at the exit opening of an egg-shaped craft while 2 Ebens interacted with our American military and scientists. Allegedly, that day we gave the Ebens back some of their dead bodies from crashes, and they gave us some more technology. And that is what I wrote about in my first book, having dealt with the government for the HBO project that I was trying to produce, in which I was shown that briefing paper at Kirtland Air Force Base about an April 25th, 1964 meeting between us, government, and a scientist, and they said Ebens at the time. There was, in 1983, no one used any of these other names. But the source of this sketch are Alan Sandler and Robert Emenegger, who wrote and produced the book and TV documentary in 1974 entitled UFOs, Past, Present, and Future. Bob Emenegger later told me face-to-face that the illustration was sketched in his presence directly from a 16-millimeter film frame that was being held up to light. It had been delivered, the film had been delivered from the Pentagon under the orders of General Weinbrenner, and that they were expecting to be able to use and say and show the landing footage of these one craft down, two up above in an offensive-defensive pattern. And at the last minute, the Pentagon, General Weinbrenner, pulled that film like they pull so many others. Here is another sketch of an archeoloid gray type made by a Navy quartermaster in 1972, based in Oahu, Hawaii. He saw black and white photographs of 5 1/2 foot tall extraterrestrials. 3 big-nosed archeoloids genetically created by the Ebens with rapid cycle cloning. These are Eben android creations. And they were standing in a cement holding room in a black and white photograph that the Navy quartermaster also saw while on duty in Oahu, Hawaii. He said the noses were huge and bent below dark, slanted eyes that had bright vertical pupils like a snake or cat. The name archeoloid given by US government insiders probably relates to the ancient Greek word archon, meaning ruler or lord. And here on the left is the archeoloid big nose gray in ropey headdress holding a telepathic communication rod at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico on April 25th, 1964 in that meeting. And on the right, carved in ancient stone, is the Sumerian sun god Shamash in ropey headdress as depicted in Sumerian clay images. The eyes have large vertical pupils like a cat or reptile. The coiled rod in Sumerian text is described as a communication device. The implication is that the rods in Sumerian and Egyptian carvings were used by archeoloids to communicate with, manage, and control the Homo sapiens sapien created by manipulation of DNA in already evolving primates to produce workers from Mesopotamia ruled by off-world overlords. But evolving primates were deliberately kept ignorant of the true bigger picture. Government insiders ran scared when they realized that the ancient Mesopotamian overlords were actually some form of archeoloids made by the Ebens that humans have worshipped as Sumerian or Anunnaki gods. How ironic that the Ebens made the archeoloids, and then the Ebens and archeoloids made Homo sapien, who ended up worshiping the archeoloids. So the Reagan briefing introduces the US president to a big picture of Ebens using rapid cycle cloning to genetically create, whether you want to call them androids, organic robots, clones, the big-nosed archeoloids, and the four-fingered quadloids. These were made by the Ebens, according to this briefing. I wonder what President Reagan said privately to his old friend, CIA Director Casey, about the revelation that ETs manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create various models of Homo sapien that have been subjects of an even social experiment for thousands of years, and I've been told at least 270 million years by an analyst for the Defense Intelligence Agency. And that could explain why Earth has been such a haunted planet, as John Keel titled his brilliant book so many years ago. With so many mysterious phenomena, and why power structures have always ruled with secrecy. In their experimentation, it might be vital to the Ebens to keep humans in the dark about what we really are, why we are, and if our destiny is to ultimately thrive and spread out through the solar system, the Milky Way galaxy, and beyond, in allyship with the Ebens, the Archeloids, the Quadloids, and the Haploids. But what about the hostile Trontoloids? There is one startling answer in the President Reagan briefing in March 1981, when advisor number 4 talks about the technology of the dangerous Trontoloids. Mr. President, the Trontoloid technology is probably 1,000 years more advanced than ours, maybe even more. Some of their materials are not found on this planet, strange materials, nothing like Earth. We found several strange spots on the Eben and Trontoloid star charts. We concluded these spots were space tunnels, as the Ebens had described, shortcuts from one point of space to another. According to the Ebens, the Trontoloids use a different form of propulsion, something like matter versus antimatter. A great deal of energy is released, but we don't have the capability to do that. Reagan, these Trontoloid aliens can imitate humans. They can look like blonde humans. However, they are not blonde, but ugly-looking insects. They can imitate looking like humans. President Reagan, well, how in the world do they do that? And they answer, they have the ability to change their bodies. As I said before, they are 1,000 years ahead of us in technology and probably every other science. So which tall or short blonde Nordics might be used as camouflage for Trontoloids that President Reagan was told were actually dangerous insects, and the government people doing the briefing say that they know that they come from a planet only 10.5 light years from Earth, named Epsilon Eridani? Or are some blondes and red-haired beings trying to help android humanity because we are somebody's androids? There's no way of getting around that as a fact. And if that is why the government of the United States doesn't want any of us to know, because they don't want to say you're androids, but they're sure happy to introduce to President Ronald Reagan that we have allies called Ebens that made 2 of 4 other non-humans on a list with rapid cycle cloning. So are some of the blondes and red-haired beings of history actually another type of species trying to help android humanity, such as Archangel Michael, who historically has fought off dragons and serpents? I have been told by a Washington, D.C.-based whistleblower that MJ12 evolved to a different letter number code that began E2, perhaps related to an alleged black budget military organization with the Defense Department called E2SCD, the Extraterrestrial Space Command Directorate. Does it exist in that number, letter, and those title today? Probably not. Part of the success of intel and counter-intel is like a shell game. You constantly are changing the position of the P under the shells. so that if you work for the government for X period of time and you leave and you think you're going to get all of the secret documents that you were exposed to when it was called 57Z, everything will be changed after you've left. I have also been told that about 2,500 years ago, the Ebens genetically experimented with DNA changes in humans living in Bhutan, Tibet, and Nepal. The result was that some of those altered humans, androids, rapid cycle cloned, were transplanted to Central America. Specifically, the Mayans were related to that genetic experimentation. And one man who worked for the CIA, and I knew his background and saw his ID, even though nobody's ever supposed to see. He said that the Ebens explained to the government that this was an experiment, another manipulation of DNA as an experiment that they wanted to do, but that in 850 AD, the Ebens took their experiment to another planet, like they had done with the archeloids and the quadloids. And that the scientists of Earth, who are content with the historic academic explanation of the disappearance of the Mayans as related to drought and starvation, is not true at all. That the entire 850 AD Mayan civilization was taken by the Ebens to populate another planet as they had the archeloids and the quadloids. My Washington military source told me that the Ebens who made us and put us here, watch us live and grow. The Ebens have been here since before the beginning of the dinosaurs. I asked him what happened that caused almost total annihilation of Earth life, including the wipeout of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. He said, quote, "I read in the Yellow Book, that is an Eben holographic, everything comes up three-dimensional. I've talked actually with 2 or 3 people who have handled this. You have to know how to hold it, and if you know how to hold it a certain way, then, there's some kind of an index, you can look through the history of our solar system, is what I've been told, from the beginning, from the gas to where we are now. And that as you hold it, tilt it, however it works, probably a lot having to do with their mental control, that whatever you're looking at will come up in a kind of a cube, hologram, and of course, you think of Princess Leia in Star Wars. He jokes and said, well, where do you think that George Lucas got that idea? I read in the Yellow Book, an Eben three-dimensional history of Earth, that the Ebens knew back in 65 million years ago that a very large asteroid was going to hit the Earth. The Ebens wrote that they were saving one of each species that was on this planet, not just the dinosaurs, but the ants and insects, flies, snakes, fish, everything. The Ebens said they took one of everything to save all of the species before the asteroid hit. And I said to him, so it's a Noah's Ark rescue story? Right, he said. And I guess they've experimented with life forms here on Earth ever since. But what bothers us in the agency is that the Ebens can do most anything that they want. They could have evaporated that asteroid, even if it was 6 miles in diameter, but they didn't. Does that mean the Ebens wanted to get rid of their 80 million year-long dinosaur experiment? What came next was the rise of mammals. Humans are primate mammals that apparently the Ebens created too. Linda, maybe we are an android experiment just like they made and experimented with the Archeloids, and the question is, would the Ebens save us if a big asteroid was headed for Earth? When you boil the Reagan intelligence briefing down, it's about one prime intelligence, the Ebens, that genetically made with rapid cycle cloning the next 2 ET species on that list of 5. And that means those 2, the Archeloids and the Quadloids, would be equivalent to AI androids made to do service for the Ebens. And then allegedly, what did the Ebens do according to the presidential briefing? The Ebens put the Archeloids with the big noses out in the Milky Way galaxy, including the probability that the big-nosed Archeloids with the elongated heads and the ropey headdresses had something to do with the Anunnaki and the Sumerians on Earth. And then the Ebens used the quadloid praying mantis lizard hybrids to be scientific overseers of many other planetary life seeding projects. Do the Archeloids and Quadloids know their true history any more than we Homo sapiens sapien know ours? Either way, if the Ebens or Anunnaki manipulated DNA in already evolving primates on Earth a couple of million years ago, is it fair to ponder that those first Earth humans were artificial intelligences for those that made us from manipulating genes? Just like robotic lab scientists today on Earth are manipulating wires and metals and plastics to replace artificial programmed intelligence in robots, and Elon Musk is working on neural lace so that we can become cyborgs. Are we humans someone else's androids? I think the answer is yes. And now in the 21st century, without yet being publicly introduced to our alien AI makers, we ourselves are now creating other intelligences to be soldiers, truck drivers, cooks, housekeepers. But what we are making so far is in the machine category and not yet full-blown other organic, artificially produced intelligence. But in January this year, there were headlines that human scientists have now produced the first primate clones, 2 identical macaque monkeys. They were created by somatic cell nuclear transfer, the same process that created the first cloned sheep, Dolly, in 1996. Maybe we should realize that genetic manipulation to make clones, androids, hybrids, and cyborgs has long been the Eben process for distributing their civilizations' intelligences and geopolitical control to other planets, solar systems, and galaxies. This past year, I interviewed astrophysicist Brian Greene at Columbia University in New York City. I asked Professor Greene, quote, "It almost seems inevitable that Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien will ultimately be replaced by cyborgs," close quote. Professor Greene, "Yes, and many people find that distressing and frightening. And if that's the way things evolve, I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm not particularly wedded to this biological organic form in which we currently reside. And if it turns out that this is a stepping stone en route to a form of life and consciousness that resides in digital and a more technologically oriented housing like cyborgs, I'm okay with that. In fact, maybe that's the way that we humans will achieve immortality. I mean, Linda, in the future, our cyborg descendants may look back on us with pity, like how sad it was that there was that phase during which this wondrous thing called consciousness And this wondrous thing called life was housed in such a delicate framing that it could only persist for, say, 100 years. How terribly, profoundly sad that so many generations of humans had to live with that kind of constraint. The flesh and blood human body. Close quote. Thank you, dear humans, for making it to Eureka Springs all these years.